is Michelle Hauser. Welcome back to another cooking demo for a chef in med school. Today's demo is over how to cook whole grains, and the one that I'm going to be using as an example today is a brown rice. And this cooking demo will be a little bit different than most of the others that I'm doing, in that there's only so much that I can show you in 10 minutes. But there is a very detailed description, as always, of what I'm doing, as well as a cooking chart which I know you can't see from there, but it lists all the different types of grains that you can probably think of, whether or not they're gluten-free, for those of you that are concerned. And for every cup of grain in this column, there's also a listing of how much water per cup of grain, how much cooking time, and how much you end up with at the end once your grain is cooked. And also, as I'll mention, how much time it should stand after you've turned off the heat, but before you actually eat the grain. And so, as I mentioned, all of this can be found on the blog, achefinmedschool.blogspot.com. And so, without further ado, let me get started. As I mentioned, we'll be using brown rice today. And the first thing you want to do is take some kind of strainer that your grain won't go through. And I have about a cup of brown rice here, so I'm just going to dump it into the strainer. And turn on some cold water. And just rinse the extra coating of starch that rice tends to have on it when you get it from the store off. And then just shake it a bit to get the extra water that's sticking to each of the grains off, because that's going to affect the amount of water that you put into the pan when you cook it. And in the chart I've actually accounted for that a little bit. So there might appear to be a little bit less water than you're used to using, say if you just took something straight out of the rice bag and threw it into a rice cooker. But I promise you this should work. So the next thing you want to do is you want to take your pan, and we'll just pretend I'm over the stove so that I don't have my back to you, since I'm a filming crew of one here. And what you want to do is then you just want to dump the rice into the pan. And on the chart I have listed for 1 cup of brown rice, you want to use 1 3/4 cup. And if you want to be exact, you might want to use a liquid measuring cup. I can eyeball this, so I actually don't usually measure it when I do it at home, but I know that most people like to measure it, so we'll do it this way. And so I have 3/4 cup more water. I'll add that to the rice. And then it also helps to bring out the flavor of anything when you're cooking to add a pinch or 2 of salt. So at this point I might add a 1/4 to a 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well. And then what I would do, again pretending I'm on the stove, is I would have it uncovered. I would turn the heat up to high, and I would wait until the water came to a rolling boil. And then once it was just at a rolling boil, I would take a fork or a spoon and stir it quickly so that the rice wasn't all stuck to the bottom of the pan. And then I would turn the heat all the way as low as it would go without being off. And then I would put a lid on, and at that point I would cook it for the amount of cooking time listed in the cooking chart. For this brown rice, it's going to be about 35 to 40 minutes. And then when it's done, what I tend to do is I don't even take the lid off, and this is actually a great trick for making rice, and this is where a lot of people go wrong, not knowing, is my rice too wet, is it too dry? What I tend to do is maybe take a quick peek just to make sure it's not getting mushy and it's too wet, but as long as it looks the way you want it, or maybe a little on the dry side, either way, then I would just put the lid back on without doing anything, and I'll move it off the heat. And I'll just let it set for at least 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how long you let it sit, but that just kind of helps the moisture to distribute evenly throughout the rice, and lets it finish cooking a little bit. At that point, you can fluff it up with a fork and serve it, or you can do what I tend to do. I usually make more than 1 cup any given point in time. What I do is, as you can see here, is I will take 1/2 or a 1 cup measuring cup, and I will scoop the rice out of the pan with a spoon and pack it into the cup, not hard, but just so it's firmly in there. And then I'll dump it out on a plate, and you can just kind of like smack it on the plate, and it will come out without using any non-stick spray or anything like that. And then I get these rice cubes, is what I like to call them. And then I just usually put them on a larger plate than this, put all of them out on there, or a sheet pan, and put that in the freezer until they're frozen solid. And then all you have to do is either pull them off, or if they're stuck a little bit when they're frozen, you can just hold them with your hand, flip it over, and then run some warm water on it, and that will loosen them up. Then you can take this off, and then I just slide them into a Ziploc bag like this, and put them into the freezer. And then what that allows me to do is, I don't always have 45 minutes or however long this takes to make dinner every night. Usually I get home and I'm starving, or I just don't have that time. So this allows me to have pretty much instant grain or rice whenever I want it. And all you do to use this is to put it in a bowl, a microwave-safe bowl, with some sort of cover on it. You can use an upside-down plate, or if you actually have a bowl with a lid, that works too. And I usually just take my fingers, get them moistened, a little bit of water in the sink, kind of sprinkle a little bit of water over that, put the lid on, put it in the microwave for a minute or two, and fluff that up, and it tastes just like freshly made rice. There'll be no difference. And you've saved yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, versus buying the already pre-made rice. And it's much better for you than the quicker cooking instant or white rice. So I guess that is, that's all you have to do. Generally, I tend to do this when I get home and I have some time where I'm working. I will either put a pot of some sort of rice or grains or beans on the stove, since this needs very little hands-on time. And then I'll just set a timer and walk away and do my thing, and then come back and just package it up. And that's how I manage my time as far as cooking at home for myself, but having an incredibly busy schedule. So the one other thing I didn't mention was backing up, going to the cooking part. I said if the rice looks a little bit too wet when you look at it, what I would do at that point, instead of the standing with the lid on, I would let it stand still. But what I would do is just some of that extra liquid will evaporate if you literally just take the lid off and let the standing happen without the lid on. But that's only if it's just too wet. Otherwise, it should end up perfect. I never use a rice cooker. I never use any other method. This is all I do. And everyone that I've explained this to has thought it was the best tasting rice that they've had, easiest, cheapest. You don't need any extra equipment, and pretty much instant once you've made it and stored it away. So thanks for watching again. I hope this has been helpful for you, and happy cooking.